In this episode, love guru Riana, Milne, and I came up with a few sketches.
You know, we talked about the childhood traumas. Having that person come in and trying to have all 10 of the childhood traumas, but they don't, so they're trying to make it up as they go along. Dealing with the worst couple ever. And so you're talking to the man and then the woman separately to find out about how completely awful their relationship is. What happens if your parents come and visit you? Your mom and dad come and visit you for relationship advice.
Which one did we pick? You'll find out on this episode of...
It's a sketch comedy podcast show.
Welcome to Sketch Comedy Podcast Show, the one-of-a-kind show where I, Stuart Rice, invite interesting people to have intriguing conversations and then improvise a comedy sketch based on what we talked about. It's the only show like it on the internet. I don't know about you, but I love talking about relationships. I talk about them all the time, and I'm always curious about them, which is why this episode's guest is so intriguing. Riana Milne was told at a young age that no one in her family was ever going to go to a therapist. So she did exactly what every strong-willed child will do. She became a therapist. Not just any therapist either. Riana became an expert in relationships and how to fix them or learn how to move on from them. Riana is also the author of 7 books, including Love Beyond Your Dreams, Break Free of Toxic Relationships to Have the Love You Deserve, which is a bestseller on Amazon. And she also helps couples and individuals navigate the world of successful partnering on her website at rianamilne.com. Riana and I talk about relationships, which should be pretty obvious, but we also talk about her dad, who was a spy. No, seriously, he was a legit spy like James Bond, and the stories are incredible. We also talk about the 10 types of childhood trauma that you no doubt have experienced, and somehow Riana and I find a way to make it lighthearted and fun. Then we record a sketch because isn't that the whole point of the show? And now, my conversation with Riana Milne, love guru whose dad was a secret spy.
Riana.
Yeah. Give it to me, Stuart.
What makes you interesting?
Life. What occurred to me in life. How I've dealt with things in life. And, one thing I loved about your show is you got to have fun. You can't take everything so damn seriously. You got to have fun. Shit happens to everybody. So that's what makes it interesting, right? Because life happens to all of us.
It does. And I think it's what we do with the crap that we get flung, right? That's the big thing. And I think that's probably, we could probably talk quite a bit about, how you deal with that crap and where do you pile
spiritually, we say it's the earth school, right? So in Buddhism, they say, you're supposed to learn lessons in life. It's not supposed to be a joyride 100% of the time. So when you get challenged, the important thing is to have the conscious, positive mindset to deal with the stuff that's going to come your way.
And how do you do that? How does one go, man, my life is blah, or this thing happened, or my dog died, or whatever other country song thing you can think of. Like, how do you come out of that and just kind of go, yeah, I learned a lesson, and how am I going to use this going forward?
Well, this is what we call mindset work. So most people, 8 out of 10 people, have 8 out of 10 negative thinking all the time. It's called our self-talk, what we say inside of our heads. And that all comes from our conditioning as children. So what I call childhood traumas that many of us experience, actually research shows 90% of people experience childhood trauma. So how we deal with that is how we deal with anything else that's difficult as an adult. But the good thing is we can train our minds to be not only act from the unconscious emotional triggers that most people do, instead to be consciously aware. And it's also a faith-based system that, we understand lessons will happen. We don't always understand why at the time. But even when bad things happen, we have to look at it in a positive way and say, what can I learn from this? What can I do from this? What is this trying to teach me at this time? Maybe I'm supposed to let this partner go because a new one is coming into my life that will even be better and more evolved and consciously, emotionally healthy for me,
Yeah, I actually am a big fan of the when it's not working, like move on with a relationship. We'll be talking a great deal about relationships. I know that this is going to happen.
Okay.
But this has been my thing is if you've got a really hard, if it's really hard and you really have to work at it within the first year, it's maybe not right. Maybe not the thing. If you notice within the first couple dates, like, I really don't like this or that, it's like, well, maybe it's time to cut and run.
Don't push it. Yeah. Well, really, when you're falling in love, the right relationship does feel easy and it's comfortable and you can be your authentic self. And this is what I tell my clients they have to look for. You don't need to manipulate or control or convince somebody to love you. When it's right, it just falls into line beautifully. And usually, though, there is a lot of negotiation the first year because obviously you're two different people. So you need to understand what this person likes, partner A and partner B, and negotiate those differences through. So there's nothing wrong with a little bit of drama. But if it's constant cheap drama, you've got the signs. And there's a lot of signs that the relationship is toxic. So if it becomes toxic, you don't stay. Obviously, if there's emotional abuse, physical abuse, verbal abuse, cheating, extreme jealousy and control, you don't want to stay with a partner. Yogurt out of the refrigerator, right? And then being yelled at, right? Yeah, for sure.
I agree with you. And I have older children. I have a 21-year-old and an 18-year-old and a 14-year-old who's eventually going to enter into the dating pool, I'm sure.
Right. Mm-hmm.
But my statement is always like, hey, have fun, but like, don't get too attached to the idea of being in a relationship with someone because relationships don't always last. They often evolve. And this is kind of where it's going to get kind of fun because I'm curious what you think about what I'm saying to my kids and raising them.
Okay. Well, the number one thing is, Stuart, you want to be a good role model. Would that be you? So they're going to be watching.
I ain't no role model. I didn't ask to be no role model.
Yeah, well, sorry, it kind of came with the birthing instructions. You are the dad, you are the role model. So for the male version of, if you have the daughter, then you do, the first man she falls in love with is her dad. So can she believe in you? Does she trust you? Do you follow through on your word? How you discipline, is it with love? And the word discipline actually means to teach. We are to be the teachers of our children. And if you're yelling and screaming and hitting your kids, guess what? They grow up doing the same thing and they grow up to be very defiant teens. So I've worked in the schools from grades kindergarten all the way through college with kids that came from traumatic homes. And then they're saying, well, why are they acting out as teenagers? Well, hello, what did you show them when they were kids? Was it a domestic violence household situation? Well, that's what they were modeled. So it's really important as parents that what you do is really conscious and aware, and you teach them what you want them to know. So how you model the relationship with their mom is going to say a lot about love. So even the divorced people out there, still treat your ex-partner with love and respect because your kids want to love both of you. It's not a tug of war. Not one parent's supposed to be loved than the other, or you're going for points. No, you want to support both mom and dad and the kids and their actions and support them together.
I completely agree. And that actually, speaking about the divorce, I think that's a very good example of a relationship that I was very attached to being married. That was something I'm very attached to. Okay. And then when it stopped being us being married, I was very angry for a little bit. And then I realized like that relationship my feelings about her, my feelings changed. Her feelings obviously changed towards me. But the feeling of like care and love for that person didn't go away. It's just it evolved. It evolved into, instead of being a romantic relationship, it turned into more of a friendship.
Friendship, yes.
And I think, but people get just totally attached to, I'm the married guy, or my life is I'm a good wife, or whatever it is. You get attached to that, and then the next thing you know, when that other person isn't as attached to that same situation, then all of a sudden you can't handle the
change in the role. I mean, you take on that role and you take it on seriously with your vows of commitment, of course. And, the roles of I'm a mom and a dad, as well as I'm a wife and a husband, are important roles. And we buy into it 150%, So when that dissolves or goes away, it's part of losing the dream of what you thought it was going to be. And that's the sad part. So anger often comes out as a form of depression. So Stuart, you actually could have been a little bit depressed about the ending, and that's how it came out, as anger.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, depression, that's a whole nother show.
Welcome to your therapy session, Stuart.
Yeah,
I'm a psychotherapist,
I've been having a lot of therapy stuff lately.
I could talk all day about this stuff.
I couldn't afford to pay.
That's true.
Now, you are a life, love, and relationship. Now, three things: life, love, and relationship. So you're a coach for all three things.
Yes, really.
So
it's life, dating, and relationships. So I am a life coach and love coach for singles and couples.
Okay.
Yes.
And how does that change? How does that conversation change between a single person and a couple? As far as what they should be looking for and.
Okay, well, every one of my clients has gone through many of the 10 childhood traumas. That's why they're attracted to me as a certified clinical trauma professional. And they hear me speak about the 10 traumas and they're like, oh my gosh, she's talking to me. I want to solve this and get beyond this. And they are recognizing that they're sabotaging their relationships. They don't want to. They really want love. Some of these people really crave love to the point of being codependent, love addicted. But they truly do want love. So the singles, when it comes to coaching them, they tend to get into repetitive toxic relationships and they can't figure out why they keep attracting the same kind of toxic partner. When I have couples, they seem to have these cycles of great love and then great fighting. And the fighting keeps about the same topics and the past keeps getting drudged up and they each need to feel like they're right and nobody's being heard or respected. So I have to re-educate my couples to first understand each other's childhood traumas. Second, forgive each other of the past and leave the past where it belongs. Behind that door, it's locked shut. It doesn't have to come out anymore. And they're living in the now and creating their future. And with that is a new form of empathy to understand their childhood pain. And now they don't take it so personally. Well, he's doing this to me and he's attacking me. No, he's having a moment going back to his childhood trauma. And I understand this is not about me. It's about the way he's handling it. So there's an education around the childhood traumas and then teaching a brand new way of communicating through the issues.
It sounds incredibly utilitarian and effective.
It works great. Yeah.
You wouldn't be doing it, I guess.
Yeah, it's a brand new way of friendship, closeness, and the passion comes back. And they don't sweat the small stuff as much anymore because it's just like the singles, they're understanding what they're doing to sabotage their relationships. But this one has a committed relationship. They're married or living together or have kids together, and they're able to negotiate through and talk more reasonably and rationally and negotiate a win-win for everybody.
Yeah, where were you like 6 years ago?
Yes, I've been like my lone soul trying to get the message out to the world. Yeah, it's kind of a big territory to cover,
I'll try and help you as much as possible.
Thank you.
Mine was a little bit different, unfortunately. That might be a fun thing to talk about later. Speaking of childhood trauma, like people think childhood trauma and they're like, oh, obviously you're in a war zone, or childhood trauma goes to like, you have to have been sexually abused for it to qualify as childhood trauma, or physically abused, like beat, or like horrifically mentally abused. What are actual childhood traumas? Because we forget children are small and they don't have very much life experience, and so things can be very traumatic. Small things can be very traumatic, if I'm not mistaken.
Correct. That's because they emotionally don't have, the capacity in their brain to handle it. They don't have the emotional knowledge to handle traumas. And most of us grow up looking back, well, my childhood was pretty normal. I had a few bumps in the road, but you don't think it as trauma. So the 10 traumas, and I always advise your listeners to write them down, because later they're like, oh my God, I had like 7 of them. What were they again? So if you write them down, you want to meet with me later, which I do offer all your listeners to, reach out to me if they want to discuss this with me. So I will ask, how many of the 10 did you have? So the first one, and you want to put down 3 columns: me, an ex-partner or current partner, and then parents, because research shows it goes through the generations. So remember, when you're experiencing this, you're a very innocent little child. This is not to put blame or anger on anybody. It's just a fact. These things happened. So trauma happens to you. It's not like you caused any of this. So there should be no guilt or shame around it. So the first one is if your parents had any addiction. So the typical ones we think of are drugs, alcohol, but there's also sex. If a parent was out there cheating a lot, porn, gambling, hoarding, spending, eating, gaming, TV watching, workaholism. Now there's 11 right there. I'm sure there's other addictions, but those are the ones I mentioned. And people are like, oh yeah, that was an addiction. My mom ate all the time, especially when she was nervous, so there are other addictions other than drugs and alcohol. Number 2, if there was verbal abuse. So we're not talking just witnessing mom and dad in a domestic violence situation, although that's one of them, but verbal abuse is also never hearing, I love you, or being verbally put down, or your opinion doesn't matter, or, just you'll never amount to anything. Some of these horrible things that our coaches, teachers, or parents would say to us and not think twice, it really does affect a little person and their psyche. So any kind of verbal humiliation, put downs, or not being told, I love you. Third one is emotional abuse or neglect. We all know the severe forms of that. But the research also shows if you were a working parent, a single parent working 9 to 5, and your child had to come home at 3 o'clock from school, let themselves in, do their homework, there's fear and anxiety around that for the child. So that is actually stated as a form of neglect. And what are we doing? We're out working to support our family, so we don't see it in that way, but is one of the emotional traumas. Next one is physical abuse, rape, or molestation, or physical beating. That I always thought was level 10 traumas, but they're also saying, the verbal could be as much a level 10 trauma if you got it repetitively. Okay, the next one is abandonment. And there's 2 types. There's fault and no fault abandonment. So in no fault abandonment, 3 examples would be if your parent went off to war, if they worked a lot outside of the home and you're wondering where they are. Now, that was one of my examples. My dad was James Bond. He was FBI and CIA, and we didn't even know it until he was sick. And then we got letters from Ronald Reagan and William Casey. Yeah. So, I used to ask, Mom, when's Daddy coming home? She goes, well, I don't know, all pissed off. And she didn't know. And she had 5 kids to raise. So that whole dynamic was a form of abandonment.
Okay, I want to put a pin in that one. We're going to revisit that one because that's interesting.
All right. Okay. Yes. So then the fault abandonment is if there's a divorce and let's say dad leaves the home and he promises to see the kids on the weekends and then he cancels it last minute or doesn't show up or shows up late, or you go to the house and he's more interested in his new girlfriend than in you, the kids. So that's a fault abandonment. The next one is living with relatives or being part of foster care or adoption. Or like one of my clients said, what if I chose to live at somebody else's house because I didn't want to go home? So after school, she always went to her friend's house, did homework, had dinner, and then she had to go home in time to go to bed. And I said, yes, that counts too. You just didn't want to be at home or you could not be it with your parents. The next one, trauma number 7, is very common. It's personal trauma. And this is if you were bullied, put down, didn't feel good enough, didn't feel like you fit in. You might have been born with a medical condition, or let's say you're a little overweight child or skinny and gawky like I was, so those are some of the personal traumas you could have gone through. Number 8 is sibling trauma. Either your sibling was born with a medical condition, or they might have bullied you, or the most common, they were perceived by you to be the golden child, the most favored of mom and dad. And the last one, trauma number 9, is family trauma. That could be a parent incarcerated, losing your home by flood, fire, the mortgage crises. There was a lot of homes lost back then. And I'm also bringing into that, now there's more than 10 traumas. These are the most common. But from the later list, I'm bringing in community trauma, which is our school shootings, mass shootings that are becoming so prevalent. The destruction of nature today. We've got volcanoes going. I didn't grow up with any volcanoes going off in our country. We've got massive floods and hurricanes and fires and mudslides and everything else. It's devastating for the adults. Can you imagine the little kids going through this kind of devastation? It's very traumatic. And you mentioned a war zone, and I do have a client in Lebanon that grew up with bombs actively going off, and she said, Riana, I don't know if I'll be alive every day. When I was waking up as a kid, that was like, am I alive? Am I still here? So she woke up with that thought first thing every morning. And then the last one is if there was a mental health issue in mom and dad. My generation, nobody was diagnosed. They used to say, nobody would go to counseling back then. And I remembered I was sad around a boy who kind of like jilted me and didn't show up for a date. I was very sad. And I said, I think I need to go to a counselor. And she goes, no one in this family will grow up to go to a counselor. So I said, well, I will grow up to be one. And I did, because there's such shame around counseling back then. But the common ones that are difficult to have in your parents is borderline personality, which is fast trigger anger. You love them, you hate them, you never know what you're going to get that day. They get excessively angry over something that is stupid or mundane. And it's like Jekyll and Hyde. You just don't know what you're going to get. And the other one is bipolar, which is manic and depressive, real happy ups, and angry or depressive lows. So those are the 10 traumas.
Yeah, that last one can be very traumatic when you don't know exactly who that person is.
Yeah, borderline is tough.
Borderline is very scary.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, I just feel like if I stayed down and depressed all the time, that way it's nice and even keel for the kids. They're not going to worry about it.
That's not a good one.
Dad's crying in his room again. It's fine.
You're emotionally checking out. That kind of depression. Uh-huh. Yeah. So how many did you have, Stuart?
How many of those did I have? Let's see. So from my parents. Oh, how many of these have I had? So let's see. I guess a little bit of the addiction.
Uh-huh.
Bullied a little bit when I was a kid.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Because I've done a study on comedians.
Oh,
and many of the comedians have come from very traumatic backgrounds.
Oh, we're all... I don't really qualify as a comedian because I'm not that messed up.
No,
not that much.
What would it qualify? 8 out of, you have to have 8 out of 10.
I feel like if you hit 6 or more, then you're okay. You're okay to be in stand-up comedy. Otherwise, it's like, nah, just stay at home and do a podcast. I later on in life, not as a child did I experience, but the mental instability I experienced later on. But unfortunately, my kids did.
Yeah.
So
it's proven that it goes through the generations. Mom and dad probably had something, then we had something, and our kids can have it if we don't get a handle on it. But the good news is those traditions can be stopped once you're totally aware of those types of triggers, the emotional triggers, and you go from unconscious to conscious awareness. This is when they stop. So a lot of my clients may have rough relationships with their kids. And that's one of the reasons they sign up to work with me. And that's under the life portion, working out things in life or problems in careers or financial troubles. Just can't seem to have that successful life that they're hoping for, procrastination, and then there's the love portion, which could be jealousy, control, not feeling good enough, and always sabotaging your relationship. So it's equally important to address both.
I agree.
Yeah.
Now, have you ever run into like someone who is talking a great deal about a traumatic experience as a child, and even you were like, ugh. You had a little bit of an eye roll moment, like, all right, so they didn't take you to Toys R Us that day. That's
a little bit of that feel sorry for me mentality. Yeah. I'm always the victim. Yes. And this is part of the response. Some people really buy into the story to get love that way. It's love from pity. So instead, I teach empowerment. So I do ask their story. And of course, as a trauma specialist, I'm very sensitive. But sometimes I have to like kind of give them a little smack in the face and say, come on now. You know, we can't stay stuck in your drama. Do you really want to stay stuck there in the, feel sorry for me story? Or are you ready to put your big boy panties on and say, I'm ready to move forward and get beyond this and stop looking for some people to feel sorry for me? And actually,
the expression "big boy panties" because I think that is the funniest.
Pants. I was going to say the panties and the guy with the pants and kind of blurred them, but anyway, because the men that are chronic cheaters, actually, they are looking for that motherly love they didn't get, or the attention from the female that they didn't get as a kid. You know, they might have been the gawky, shy kid, and they're looking for that female love. So they're the chronic cheater. And they're living in that story of, I deserve this because I didn't get this as a kid. Now, it's unconscious. They're not saying that out loud to everyone. But as soon as the female would feel giving them some attraction, he goes, oh, yeah, I love this. I need this. And that's why they tended to not get as much of that as a child.
So I let's talk about me for just a minute, because it's interesting that you mentioned that. I don't cheat, but I'm in an ethically non-monogamous relationship.
Good.
Yeah, I think it's good. It works out really great, I think. I guess we'd have to ask my girlfriend to see if she really buys it on it, like keep me out of the room and ask her. But do things change a little bit? Your perception of how that relationship's going, does that change with something like ethic non-monogamy, or even just non-monogamy, or just
you have to.
I mean, we've got a lot of different relationships going on these days. I live in Portland; it's all over the board. So I'm just curious, like, how does it change?
It's true. I mean, you have to both agree with what you want up front. If you're agreeing to live in the lifestyle, which is an open relationship, there's even rules in the lifestyle community. If you're living exclusively together but not marrying, you both have to be on board with that. It shouldn't be, yes, I agree to this, we're living together, and a year later they're like, well, I really want to marry, because that's not what the agreement was up front. Or if the agreement was, I prefer not to marry live together until we're engaged, then that may be a more conservative couple, but that's their agreement. So really whatever relationship style you choose, it has to be totally discussed up front, the rules around that discussed, so that you both feel comfortable and you're on board with it.
Any sort of relationship that one of these like different types of relationships that you're like, I don't even know how to approach that. Of course, you're going to say no because you're a professional. But
I've studied all of it. I'm not here to judge anybody. People can love in the way that they feel is best for them. The part I'm concerned about is hurting anyone else along the way. I would rather see a couple in a lifestyle relationship where it's open than two people being together in what, let's say, the female thinks is an exclusive relationship, which is monogamous, and then the guy's out there cheating on her. Now, this is where someone's going to get hurt. So this is why I said it takes two evolved people. Now, evolved means being your highest and best self, meaning being true to integrity, doing the right things when nobody's looking, be honorable to your word. And when two people are doing that, you have the best relationship. If one is being honorable to their word and following what the agreement was, and the other one's way off in left field doing whatever the frig he wants, then we got a problem. That is a problem. So this is when the relationship becomes toxic because then it's filled with lies and, hurting other people.
Yeah, it's funny. This is the most secure relationship I've ever been in, because I know that there's not going to be any lies. There's not going to be any subterfuge with any of this. Because
there's no jealousy.
Of course there's jealousy. I look at jealousy as a different thing. And of course, anytime my partner says, hey, I went out, blah, 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 it's like, oh, that's that feeling of jealousy. And it's like, oh, but it's kind of refreshing because it's like, oh yeah, I care. Like, I know I care. Of course I'm going to feel these feelings. Now I got to just figure out, like, why am I feeling these feelings? And it's always like, oh, it's because, internally I've got this voice in the back of my head telling me I'm not good enough.
That's trauma 7. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But over the years, like, it's become much more diminished. And so it's like that voice doesn't speak as loud. So where it might be like someone, my partner will say, hey, I did this. And it's like, oh man, I'm getting those feelings. And, but why? Oh, they're subsiding. And it's really that fast. And within a conversation, I can be, well, tell me about it. Like, how did it go? And those types of things. And it's been really refreshing. I think for both of us, because I think we both have the same thing. And she'll tell me, like, I'm feeling really jealous. And it's like, I understand.
So jealousy does mean, yes, that you care about your partner if there was no jealousy. But then we worry about any of this being way off, again, the grid, where you're yelling and screaming and ranting and raving and throwing things because you're jealous. That's destructive jealousy or control, So if it's jealousy and you're saying, oh, I feel these pangs because I love you, babe, then that's totally different than this anger and control jealousy.
I agree. That is disgusting. That not disgusting. I don't want to use that word. I want to use the word troubling. Is when you're feeling like you have to control somebody else's emotions. I know when I was younger, young and foolish and didn't know anything, I used to try to negotiate feelings, which I look back on now and I'm like, what was I trying to do? Like, no, you should stay because let me give you reason. And it's like, in the end, like, what am I doing?
Well, you cared and you wanted it to stay together.
Yeah.
But a lot of people that I work with are very successful in business, but struggle in love. And they can't figure out, if I'm so successful over here, why can't I get love right? Well, the success actually comes from one of the childhood traumas or a couple of them. So it could have been verbal put downs. You'll never amount to anything if you heard that from dad. Or, being teased and bullied. Oh, you're a nerd. You're never going to do anything. And it's like inside we have what's called the watch me attitude, which is the mindset for success. It's like it's not an anger or defiance. It's a way to talk yourself into the strength that you need to be successful. So this comes from a lot of people of childhood trauma. They can be very successful in life. And there's many examples of this in our actors and politicians and business people who have had very sad childhoods. But success was bred from that sad childhood, but the love piece was never handled. And that's why they still struggle in love today. That's the reason. So we analyze both. And then when a lot of the women in their relationships, that same control they needed in business to be successful, they try to control their man, which is really difficult because now we got the male ego and the caveman brain that we're dealing with that needs to feel he's the provider and he's, strong to take care of his woman. And as soon as that feeling's diminished, the relationship suffers as well.
Yep. I've seen that. I've seen friends of mine have that issue, and personally, just ladies, I don't have that issue. If you want to be the breadwinner, I'm down. That'd be amazing.
But see, here's the problem, right? Once the woman becomes the breadwinner and she's forced to, quote, be the man, stereotypically, the cave woman's brain, she always wants to feel safe, no matter how successful she is. She wants to feel nurtured, cherished, safe, and taken care of, no matter what. So now she's become the man. And now there's going to be all kinds of weird dynamics because she can't count on her man to be the man. So this is all old brain, caveman, reptilian stuff going on.
Yeah. We're just never going to be happy. No, I'm just kidding. Let's go through some dating tips. Let's say we've got a single guy. Hey, let's do this. Single male identified, single female identified. All right.
Okay.
What's one tip that you could give the single male identified, single female identified person to just kind of like make their lives a little bit easier?
Be your authentic self. Don't keep bringing your past into your present. You don't need to bring your ex up when you're on a date. if someone asks you, you first always say we had a lot of fun together, and you did, or you wouldn't have been with them. Mention the good things. And then say at the end, but this one thing was just not aligning with my life. Like he just wasn't financially responsible and I just couldn't live with that. But I wish him well. Done. 2, 3 sentences. That's it. So don't bring your past up. Be your authentic self. Say, if you're on dating sites, be real. Don't put your age down 10 years younger and you show up, why I look 10 years younger, don't I? And I'm there, no, you really don't. I say what it is. I'm authentic. But have to the current pictures, the current age, be yourself, say what you want. Don't be negative even in your profile.
So wait, you're saying that the picture I have with my 18-inch afro is not...
It's not what I should right now. No, that would be a little bit of stretching the truth.
All right.
True. So that's the important thing, because you don't want to waste people's time. People are on dating sites really to find someone. And if you're lying about who you are, that starts the entire friendship or relationship off with a lie. So therefore, it's worth nothing.
That's a great point. That's a great point. And then let's just say we've got a couple and they're maybe struggling. What's the one tip that you could give? Like, hey, here's a good starting point. I mean, besides giving them your phone number and your car.
Yeah, before giving me a call. Well, the childhood trauma is pretty deep work. So I can't say understand each other's traumas until they get that chance to do that. But I would say, keep in mind that you're a team. What is best for the team? It shouldn't be your way. It should only be his way. Negotiate what is best for you two both and move forward with those 1 or 2 choices. Each of you should come up with 2 ideas and then negotiate which 2 are best to go with for the team. And if you two are good, take the time to date. Because if you have a family and you're not dating, you put the kids constantly first, schlepping them to their sports and doing this and doing that, and you never have personal, intimate time or daytime together, that relationship's going to fall apart. You think you're doing the right things by the kids, but you're not. You've got to keep the relationship strong. So once a weekend, whether that's Friday or Saturday night around the kids' sports schedule, you say Saturday night's mom and dad's night, or Sunday afternoon and Sunday evening, we're having our date. You're not doing anything. That's our night. And they have to understand that. And when they grow up with that rule, it's just worked in as part of the family plan. They understand that.
I completely agree. That was one of and that was my fault in my marriage was I did not take that as precious as I should have. So,
yeah. You always want to keep dating your partner. Never stop. Twice a week is ideal.
Oh, that is okay.
Yeah.
And date doesn't necessarily have to be like, we're going to a play and a dinner. Like it can be like
walk on the beach, put your blanket down, share a bottle of wine and talk.
And
That's
get
always
for public indecency.
Yeah. Take a hike somewhere, and sit down and, just chat, just be real with each other and try not to bring up
arrested for public indecency.
Yeah, that's always a good one, right?
We've had to bail mom and dad out of jail so many times. Yeah. All right. So before we get into doing the sketch, I got to ask, your dad was a spy?
Yeah. Isn't that awesome?
I don't know how much of this you can talk about before we get the
Do you want a couple of stories?
Yeah, of course.
That were kind of weird in my childhood. Okay. So in the Milne household, there's 5 kids, and we had a whole neighborhood full of kids, and everyone came to our back door. Nobody goes to the front door in our neighborhood, right? It's like formal. So we're in the house and the front door bell rings. I'm like, Mom, someone's at the front door. And she goes, oh, well, what would this be? And we, and I'm sitting on the steps with my brother. We want to see who it is. So she opens up the door. It's like, are you Mrs. Milne? Yes. We're the police. You must come down to the police station. So my mom, this mother of 5 kids, is being arrested. She goes, for what? She goes, ma'am, you can't talk now. You've got to come with us. She goes, just lock the doors. So we didn't know what was going on. And she says, my dad shows up. Now, meanwhile, my mom doesn't know. He's FBI, CIA.
Wait, how old were you at this point?
I was like 7 or 8. So she had to leave us behind. We locked the door. And they come home within the hour, and she goes, I said, so what happened? She goes, I don't know. They said I had counterfeit money. Well, she found a briefcase in the garage full of money. And she says, that Jack's hiding the money on me. She was pissed and went deposit in the joint bank account. And it was all counterfeit. So they arrested her for counterfeit money. He goes in, talks to them for like 2 minutes, walks out with my mother, and they go home. So she didn't understand why she was arrested, didn't understand why it was counterfeit. She really thought he had all this money stashed aside from her, what was going on. And he just says, you just don't ask me questions. Someone asked me to hold a suitcase for him. I didn't know it was full of money. That wasn't real, and I have to give it back to him or something. She came up with some story, but that was one of them. Another one is my family went to Key West, Florida every year in the family station wagon, the Buick with the wood on the side, 5 kids and the dog, driving down. And because
was it one where you could look out the back, you could face the back?
Yeah, I was always in the cubby hole. I was the 4th out of 5 kids. So me and my little brother amongst all the suitcases in the cubby hole of the station wagon. And he was colonel in the Air Force, so we'd stay at Quantico, and then we stayed at Homestead on the way to Key West. And the one time he takes a really weird diversion and goes to Macon, Georgia. And Macon, Georgia was a really rough area of town for this Caucasian family in a station wagon to be in at 12 midnight. My mom's there. Jack, I don't want to go there. Why do we have to go to Macon, Georgia? Just keep driving. I'm tired, Bev. No, I'll drive. No, we're going to Macon, Georgia. Like, we had no idea why we're like swerving off and going to this particular town. And, the best way I could describe it at that time, and again, I was a little kid, was the ghetto. Okay. And we had no idea why we were going there. And we kind of stayed in this kind of old hotel, and we wake up the next day and the family leaves, and we leave early, but there was a murder in the hotel, and the police were investigating why there was a murder in the hotel. So my mom's there, see, Jack, there's some guy in there, dangerous man in there that's killed somebody, and our family could have been affected. So, I mean, he would never say if he was the one that did that, but I'm just putting pieces together. And when he was sick with cancer, I gave him a notebook. I'm like, Dad, write down your stories. And he wrote in the first page, babe, I can't write the stories down. They have to go with me to protect you and the family. So when I saw that, I'm like, oh, come on, Dad. He goes, well, you probably know a couple of them. I'm like, what, the suitcase of money? And he just laughs and shakes his head. I'm like, wait, Macon, Georgia? He goes, yeah, why would we go to Macon? And there was a couple other things I could remember as a little kid that just seemed really weird and off. But yeah, so my dad was a spy.
Wow.
And the weirdest thing is, when I was a kid, one of my favorite games to play was being a spy.
Sure.
He used to just laugh. And me and my younger brother, Scott, we even put the toy closet as our fort, the spy club business is what we called it.
Right. Because a good spy agency has a spy building that says spy building on the outside.
Yeah, and it's just club business, we're just meeting for business. So little did I know my dad was really one. So.
That's amazing. So thank you for that.
You're welcome.
And that's all right. Well, it is about that time. It's been about a half hour, so I could keep talking to you all day because I have relationship theories too. But let's talk about making the sketch.
Oh, we did more than just think about recording a sketch. We actually did, which you'll hear in just a little bit. Before I do that, though, we had a lot of outtakes and a lot of additional conversation that you don't hear in this episode. However, it is available to our patrons. That's right. Go to patreon.com/sketchcompod. That's SKETCHCOMPOD. And become a patron for $1 a month, and you can hear the entirety of our conversation, our sketch recording with all the mistakes, and even coming up with the sketch. It's actually a lot of fun. Plus, you get the visual compendium, which is you actually get to see the video of us talking. And Riana's a beautiful person, so you want to be able to see that. Me, not so much. Just cover up half your screen. Anyway, Riana, you're great. Your stories are amazing. What is a great way for people to get in touch with you?
Sure. I want to help anyone that is relating to the childhood traumas, or they know they're suffering and sabotaging their love relationships, or if they're single, they just keep in that repetitive relationship that keeps breaking their heart. That's what I'm there to help with. So just reach out to me on my website. It's rianamilne.com. And there's a pop-up window. Just tell me your story. Tell me what's going on. No one else sees that but me. And the first 10 listeners of Stewart Show, I want to give you a free Life and Love Transformation Discovery Session. It's a $500 value. And for everyone else, there is a free ebook that goes deeper into this topic. It's at havethelove-you-deserve.com. It's like a 12-page ebook. It goes deeper and it'll answer a lot of your questions. And you can also reach out to me through the ebook. So that's at havethelove-you-deserve.com or my website, rianamilne.com.
Just going to say, if you're having a hard time connecting with people, we're getting close to Valentine's Day. So if you have somebody you're trying to target, or you have a relationship now that's not going so great, what a great Valentine's gift to yourself and your partner to get the help that you need to make a healthy relationship for you going forward. And now our sketch, Living with the Monster, in 3, 2.
Dave and Natalie, thank you for coming in. I know you were very concerned on the phone that you wanted to come see me. So we're just going to start by talking individually to each one of you. So Dave, tell me, what are your concerns? What are you seeing happening in the relationship?
Yeah, it's just every time I try to talk, it just seems like
you never, ever, ever just get out with it. All you do is just stammer on and on.
Natalie, let Dave talk.
He's not going to talk. He's just going to sit there.
Natalie, you've got to give him his time to talk. I'm going to ask you second. Just give me 30 seconds to hear Dave for 1 minute here.
30 seconds? I'm setting a timer on my Apple Watch.
Dave, sorry about that.
It's okay. I just had a nice, quiet upbringing, and
how did your parents relate to each other?
Well, they, it's typical. They hated each other, but it was really nice because it gave me a lot of time by myself in my room. And
did you hear a lot of yelling and fighting between your mom and dad?
Well, it was really the only time I ever heard their voices were when they were yelling at each other, or then yelling at me to get out of the room so they could yell at each other some more.
Mm-hmm. And what do you think is the problem with you and Natalie? Is yelling part of the relationship?
Well, it's part of it.
What are you trying to say?
Sometimes I just want to have it be quieter. That's all.
Okay, Natalie, Dave, thank you. But let me jump over to Natalie because she really seems anxious to want to share her opinion here.
You have 2 seconds left.
Oh, well, let me jump ahead then. See, I'm giving you an extra 2 seconds, Natalie. So tell me, what do you think is going on between you and Dave? What's the problem in your relationship?
Well, just look at him. He's just sitting there slumped over. He's always slumpy.
Well, you kind of jumped on him when he was trying to say his side of the story. Did you see that, or you didn't see that?
See what? He wasn't talking. I don't have time to just sit here and stare at each other. I've got work to do. I've got projects to work on. I've got other people I need to see.
Okay, so then let's jump right to the issue, and let's not talk about Dave right now. I want your opinion on what you think is going on in the relationship.
Well, I'll tell you exactly what's going on. He's not much fun. And all he does is he wants to sit there, and that's all he wants to do. He never wants to go out or have people over. It's almost like he's embarrassed for me to be around people.
Okay, so what's your idea of fun? What are you suggesting that you guys do together?
Well, my thing is I really enjoy what I do for a living. I work a lot.
Okay, well, he can't share that with you. What would you like to share with Dave? Have you recommended some things you two can do together?
I like to eat. I would love to go out and eat more often.
I don't know. It starts off with a meal, and then it ends up we go to a couple different Bob's Big Boys for all you can eat. And it's
not very romantic though, Dave, maybe a more romantic restaurant. Natalie, let me get back to you. Tell me a little bit about the household you were growing up in. What was mom and dad like?
Mom and dad were great. Always so lively, animated. Everything was a big deal. And I feel like that is life. Like, that's how life should be. Everything should be a big deal.
So was there a lot of yelling then in your household?
No yelling. What are you talking about? I don't remember any yelling ever.
When you're talking right now, you don't think this is yelling?
No. Look, I even took a Quaalude before I got in here just to calm down a little bit. I'm not yelling at anybody.
I feel like your yelling is like blowing me out the door a little bit. So can we try like lessening the volume and the pace of your words? This is some communication skills that might help you and Dave to get through some of your issues.
I don't think I have any issues, first off. I think all of the issues over on that side of the couch, because all he does is sit there. He doesn't do anything.
Now, see, Natalie, this is what we call blaming behavior. We don't want to keep blaming our partner. We have to learn to take responsibility for the things that you want to change within yourself.
He's just always sad. It's gross.
Well, sad is because he's feeling the relationship's not working. Dave, you tell us, why do you come off sad?
Well, we talked about how she works all the time. I'm worried about her health. Since we've been together, she's gained about 200 pounds.
That is only because I work a very stressful job very late at night, so I end up eating fast food.
Natalie, do you think balance in life is something we can work on?
Just eat with him when I'm with him because he's so boring. I need to excite myself.
Well, what do you do for excitement, Natalie?
Well, I like to go thrift shopping.
That doesn't really involve Dave.
No, it does involve me. Basically, what my job is to figure out how to fill the car with all of the things that we've bought.
So you're the strategist, huh? And she's a shopper.
He just has to move it around. I have to figure out what's going to be important that we buy.
Well, Natalie, are you attached to things?
That sounds like a weakness. I'm not attached to anything. It's just I really like the stuff that I got.
But do you have room for all that in your home?
We've been looking at buying a bigger longer
I no longer can walk into my bathroom.
So there's stuff all over the place?
Stacks of magazines.
But those magazines are important.
I'm a little confused about the spare tires we have in our front yard.
You never know when you're going to need spare tires.
Natalie, it sounds like there's a couple of addictions going in here. I mean, between the hoarding and the eating and the spending for things you don't really want or need.
I wouldn't have any of these issues if Helga was more available.
Uh-oh. And who is she?
She's a friend.
Heard of Helga? Who has a name like Helga? You know somebody named Helga?
Dave doesn't know this friend.
You know what? I'm just going to go ahead and say it. Helga is my girlfriend.
So you have a girlfriend.
I had no idea. This is... When were you going to tell me?
I love Helga. I think she's amazing and she's exciting. Everything about her is exciting.
Well, what's exciting about her?
She's an incredible lover. But on top of that, she rides this bitchin' motorcycle and it's amazing to be on the back of that.
So does Dave think you're working?
I don't know. He's kind of dumb. I don't know.
You keep telling me you have to go away for the weekend.
Well, I do have to go away for the weekend. I'm not going to stay at home and ride motorcycles. Duh.
So there's a lot going on. So now there's also the sexual addiction.
There is one thing Dave does that just drives me absolutely nuts, though.
Okay, let's get it all out, Natalie. What else do you have for me?
You know, he puts the toilet paper on the roll so that it doesn't come out the top. It comes out the bottom. Do you know what I'm talking about with that?
I do know what you're talking about. Does that really bother you, Natalie?
Oh my God, it's so irritating.
Okay, now Dave, did you know that this was something that really upset Natalie?
It does kind of get her goat. Yeah.
So this is a passive-aggressive move. I see. You know what, Natalie? I think you're right. I think this relationship's not going to work.
Thank you so much for joining us for Sketch Comedy Podcast Show. We hope you enjoyed listening to it as much as we enjoyed making it. Make sure to head over to sketchcomedypodcastshow.com. There you can subscribe to the show, head over to YouTube and watch some of the videos and sketches we've done there. Maybe head over to Patreon and become a patron to the show. That would be so much appreciated. Or you can leave a review someplace. Or, if you're feeling really saucy, apply to be on the show. I appreciate every single one of you that listens to the show, and I would love to hear more from you. Now I gotta get this out of the way. Sketch Comedy Podcast Show is protected under a Creative Commons Attribution No Derivatives 4.0 International License, which means that if you would like to reproduce anything in the show, please contact the show so that I can get you the right material for it. And also, this show is copyright 2022 Stuart Rice. Every day we are given a choice. Can we do the funny thing or the not so funny thing? I'm going to urge you to do the funny thing today and create an improvised comedy adventure of your own. Take care. See you next episode.